You don't absolutely give yourself to another guy, an apprenticeship cannot be functional, you know? It's a strange sort of a thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you're not going to apprentice with somebody unless the guy's great, all right? I mean, really. And if the guy's great, he has a certain amount of ego which must be stroked. So, and plus, he doesn't have the time to debate too much with you. So if this guy says, this is the ultimate wood to do this with, or this guy was the greatest guy who he had the most, impact on the deco scene or something, what happens is, initially, because of the need for knowledge, you must accept that as a fact, and you find yourself locking in personalities with these masters, and therefore you start taking on their traits. It's a very social thing. As far as the information, Nick, it's really weird. What you could learn in a 7-year apprenticeship could easily be digested in a year, maybe even 6 months. I don't know the exact time, but the proportion I'm trying to tell you, it's like 7 years could easily be squished into a half a year or a year. People today don't have that time, Nick, so apprenticeships have gone bye-bye. And with that is the personal handing down of information and minor techniques which make great artists. It's a weird thing. It's sort of sad. Anyway, I had 2 apprenticeships on the tail end of the demise of apprenticeships. Today, an apprenticeship is when you pay somebody $7,000 and they keep you for 8 months at a boarding house and show you stuff. That cannot possibly have the emotional exchange, and it cannot possibly have the one-to-one I'm talking about. You know what I mean? It's a college course, you know? Anyway, I had 2 masters, right, Nick? And here's the thing. One master was also an artist. And he was a wood carver, a gilder, a furniture maker. He was from Argentina. He died recently. He was someone who I wanted to be like. He was, because I was with him in my early 20s. I was 20 years old and I was with the guy. And everybody loved him, And more than anything, I thought, I want to be like this man. I want to be not only great at my art, but, he didn't have a big ego problem. He spoke with a heavy accent. Everybody loved him. Everybody wanted to be with Marcos, And to boot, he was great, great. And he knew so much, He created, Nick, out of unity, out of love, out of brightness, and out of light, Now my guitar master, who was a master for making guitars, he created out of darkness. He created out of feeling, I'll show them, I'll do it, I'm going to make it, I'll make them eat their words. And it was so strange to have 2 opposites, one creating from light, other darkness. Both were excellent, but the different approach sometimes short-circuited me out, would short-circuit me out. There was about a year that I was shared by both of the masters, and what a hot, cold thing to, only now that I look back, I can really see it a little bit better, But it's absolutely true what I'm saying. And I really got to see, what makes people strive, and I have a little bit of both of those things, I don't want to be more like the guitar master, more like Jimmy, because it's more painful, Marcos, everybody loved, and I tell you, I was young, impressionable, and I was just thinking, I want to be just like that, that's what I want to be just like that. I want to be loved by everybody who came in touch with him, everybody, But life doesn't go like that. But I tried. Trying to be like that got me in a lot of trouble, promising things that I couldn't really deliver, not wanting to hurt people's feelings. You stay there. I can manipulate around the shop. These are really neat. I mean, they're really neat. It's a little awkward for me to talk to you about them because it lacks a certain amount of class to one's own point. I feel I don't feel proper. But it's also exciting to vent out years of work. Basically, the only recognition I got was through like when I did something for the Stones, or if I did work for Sexes. Because the only time I got recognition is when someone heard I did something for somebody, which is hollow. When someone speaks to me about my instruments, I try never to say who I made them for, because if you made a guitar for Jimi Hendrix, would that make you a great guitar maker? Well, no. No, it has very little to do about it. Because he can get a guitar and, oh, nice, and put it in his closet and never use it. And that's very common, you know? At least 90% of my experiments fail. Now, other than the actual cost in time and money, I don't mind that. What I do mind sometimes, but I wouldn't let it stop me, is you make an experiment and it doesn't work. Well, what do you do with it? Now, when I say it doesn't work, I don't mean the guitar doesn't work. I mean you make an experiment and it's about on the level of a Les Paul, or a Strat, or a 335 type, or an L5 type. Except maybe it looks fancier. People expect something nifty. Now, if you see something like this and it sounds no different than a guitar that costs a quarter of the price, people automatically think that's negative. So you have to be very careful what you're going to do with these things. Okay, you experiment it. You put 3 different experiments in this guitar. 3 acoustical experiments. One might have something to do with braces. The other might have something to do with a finish. The other might have something to do with the feel, tension. Okay, you can't put too many in one instrument because then they start interrelating with each other. The point I'm trying to make is, well, what the hell are you doing? It's done. Do you sell it? And if you do, what about the negative attributes? Will the people understand and digest it? You know, like, well, it does this good, does this bad, you know? A Volkswagen's great for tooling around, doing here. I don't know how comfortable it is for going cross country, you know? It's a little bit, you know, it's hard for me to make an experimental guitar and then have to sell it because of the cash flow. If I had my way, Nick, I would experiment with them and burn them, you know? But it's just not the way it can be for me, you know? Fine art and art in general is great for the country, great for society, especially quote, upper class. However, don't be a failed artist. It's like being a failed boxer, you know? You know, it's sort of like a strange thing. I'm going to show you some guitars. I can't, if you want me, I can't, I'm just going to act normal. I'm going to show you something that I worked on, developed, that is an integration between art and guitar. Now, everything that I worked on is, you know, it's what I consider great tonally and feel-wise. That's a major thing. And then I wanted to look neat, and I went through phases. Now, I have one I want to show you that's from the Art Nouveau period. I want to show you one, and these things, I'm not going to finish them in this shop. I'm going to finish them at my other shop. Now, I have a holistic. Nick, when this is done, you must come. I don't think you understand. Upstairs, I have a leather case I made, all right? Just dig this. Well, you can photograph this later. I just want to, I got to look at you when I tell you. I don't show people all these things all the time. So, I have a case upstairs that I made. You have to understand, the case looks like it came from a 1920 Rolls Royce. It's a beautiful leather case. Nothing like you've seen, nothing. The materials are $1,000 for the case, my cost. And inside, I'm French fitting it with Ultra Suede. Ultra Suede is $100 a square yard, or $89 a square yard. Yeah, oh yes, it is. I line it with Ultra Suede, so I have the Ultra Suede. And what I'm doing is, this is very special wood. Now, this guitar I pre-cast. I have the rims there, a little metal rim that goes right around there to integrate it. This gets opened up like the scoop of like a Corvette or something. And instead of having an F-hole here or sound lens here, the air comes out the back. Of course, you can't put your body up against it because the air comes out that way, so it won't get like a wah 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 effect. It's carved in the round when it's done. You see the back. You can look at the front. you know.
Oh, beautiful.
And of course the neck goes onto here, you know. And when this is done, it's a more of a masculine instrument. The wood is absolute. There is no wood in the world better than this. This is a 1 of 1,000. This tree. The wood alone cost a mint for me years ago.
Yeah.
This I started a couple of years ago. Actually, had to be more, 5 years ago. Never finished it. Designed it. Designed the whole thing. Reason. I don't have the money. You know, now I got all the parts, cast and stuff.
Yeah.
But you have to be in a position to ask mega bucks for these instruments, because while I may not make any profit, I certainly can't lose money.
Yeah.
You know. But when this is done, I'm making what I call a brace of guitars, or a brace of dreams, usually a pair. And I have 2 leather cases I made, and these guitars to go in them. When these are done, I'd like you to do the work. Let me explain why. I told you I'm 38 years old, and I know things from, you know, I know when something's really good, when something's okay, and something's exciting. But these are something that's never been done. It doesn't matter if anybody else can do it. The point I'm getting to is no one else did it. And what it is a holistic approach. Everything has been designed for this, everything. From the tuning keys I made. The only thing I didn't make are the gears in the tuning keys. The things for the adjustment rod,
right.
Things for the back plate, all those I'm making and putting in the case. I have all the machines, I have all this untold thousands of dollars, right? For all these things. The adjustment rods, everything, ebony handles, ivory, the knobs, everything. It's this holistic approach. Very much like, I don't know, you know, it's just like a total approach. You get this beautiful leather case I made, you open it up, it's all French fitted. That means it's cut out for the shape of each thing. It's all French fitted. There's all the tools that you would need for the instrument, you know, including ivory picks. It's a holistic total approach. The input, the jacks, everything. This has to be documented because in today's society you just can't really do that without, you know, if money was the main thrust on this, it would never get made. And the technology behind it, the integration of the braces, really neat, Nick, really neat. But that's for another time. I can tell you, technically speaking, I went forward, and visually and artistically, I just borrowed from the past, and that's what I did, you know. And it works that well for me. That's what I feel the most comfortable. So I'm like, you know, a conglomeration. If you look at my guitars, you would think they're very old world, but when you go in, everything, the braces, everything. Now, what I'm doing on this is I'm taking all the finish off. This finish was brushed on by hand, and it's going to show up very poorly on the camera because of the gloss. However, after a minute, I take it off, it'll show up very nicely. And that's why I don't have a lot of guitars in different phases of production, but I would very much like you to, when I'm done with like that, when I'm set up in the new shop, I really believe that it might be of some use. Oh, I have one of my old instruments here. Did you ever see any of my old instruments?
I've never seen anything.
You never seen anything?
The only work of yours I've seen is what Dee has.
While the guitar isn't very fine, it's the beginning, it's the kernel. After I did this grouping, I knew that, okay, this is the beginning. I'm in the right direction. Now I look at this 5, 6, 7 years later, 6 years later, and I can see that it's a little awkward, it's not as fluid, and while I made most of the parts, there wasn't enough continuity. They didn't flow together. But you have to understand, up to this point, no one was traveling down this road. So it was an interesting thing. And when I did this a bunch of years ago, I knew I must finish the trip, you know, at any expense. And it is very expensive, time-wise. Even somewhat to my family, I feel sort of guilty about that. Let me show it to you for you, because I just want to show you what I did. Now, alright, a bunch of years ago, so I whipped this out, okay? And I look at it, and as I say, all the parts, at this point in my life, while they all didn't fit together the way I wanted them, I saw that what I wanted to do was not only possible, but it was starting to happen. Not only did I make everything, it sounds unique. This is the beginning. I started leather coating my pickups. The visuals were important. The bridge technology, a bridge for the arch top with hexaphonic transducers. The guitar's hollow, and what I was going for was to have a sound that was drawn out of the guitar, not only through electronic technology, but through acoustic manipulation. And there's so many things that I did, that we'll talk about that's interesting. And it led me to do a few things, experiments with huge, ports in the guitar, ways of getting the air out. But this guitar has a few interesting things. It's mahogany. It's just mahogany. Nothing at all that I use. Some basic carving around, little cute details, the toggle switch carved out of ivory, of course. Backplate was leather, still is. And then I started to get some thumbprints. The point back here, that's mine. Back here, the tiered and the carving back here, this is for function. However, you also make it look good. This adds about 30% more wood in this tremendous stress point over here. So I started doing many, many of these things. I wanted to show you this. Even these frets. I had these frets custom made for me. They're made out of bronze. They're phosphor bronze frets. They're bronze frets, and they're self-lubricating like bronze is. Easy to bend. Very, very nice frets. Did all the casting, the gold plating. These knobs I did out of jade. An example. The knobs I did out of jade. I thought they looked nice. On the guitar, I hate them. They look horrible. They look like I pulled them off some stereo or something. But it started. I started with manipulation of stone is unlike anything we're talking about. I mean, it's another whole feel, I started buying these machines. It was strange. Nick, it's a very strange, some gold leafing on the headpiece. You saw the headpiece is carved and gilded. Yeah, you see that? I never really integrated business and work I did. And I think any good artist probably does. However, it just seems so logical to me, Nick, that if you're doing something, you should think about what you're doing and not necessarily the money. However, I don't know if that can be done anymore today. I think one must think of the price. I didn't, and I still don't. However, because of that attitude, I can name many bad things that happened to me. Basically, it's just they don't make enough money for the instruments. Somebody once told me, sure, everybody wants one of the instruments. You make a $5,000 instrument that you sell for $2,500, and everybody will keep buying them. It's that sort of thing. This holistic approach, control of all the parts, one man's perception, one man's dreams. He has control, he has his hands in this. It's getting harder and harder to maintain that control, which I think brings integrity to anything. It's getting harder and harder to keep control, basically in terms of probably time and money. The two arch enemies of art in today's society. Everybody wants it done yesterday at a lower cost. This wood is very special, and it's due to its visual, its grain, its figure, and color. And of course, the texture, how porous, and the density, the hardness, or the specific gravity of the wood, how much it weighs per cubic inch of volume. And On the top here, we have what we call a crotch, which is the first fork on a very old tree. And that fork breaks up like that and it makes different patterns. This pattern is called a plume or a feather. And it's multicolored. So you have a multicolored plume. And it's particularly beautiful grain pattern. What happens is you don't want to hide it with lots of thick coats of anything. So the finish I chose for this is an oil finish. Basically it's an in-surface finish, and the buildup on top I keep to a minimum. I don't want too much light reflecting off the top, losing the tactile experience of this wood. It's a really nice wood. So you're putting things on, you're taking them off. Finishes like this I usually don't spray. I spray lacquers, or some guitars you can't break the kind of finish they have. Like I wouldn't make an F-hole and put a finish like this on it, because traditionally the F-holes need a lacquer finish, a high gloss. Alright. That's another thing, I tell you, Nick, it's sort of strange. What I'm doing, whether you call it an art or a craft, it's given me a freedom in a way, because I really don't go outside the shop much. And when I'm done with my work, I have a family. And I find myself really being extracted from society, rarely going out. I don't study other instruments, generally speaking, for weird reasons, one way or another, whatever the reason may be. So I set up a little world of my own. It's almost like a little government, I have my children, my wife, I have my work, I have my customers, and my friends, the customer friends. Usually all my friends are friend customers, And it's a strange little thing. I don't know how realistic it is, but it's the way I set myself up. For me, people come here like I'm the oracle. Nobody can fix this. Can you do it? I must laugh.
You're a monster.
Am I seeing a monster? Oh, don't do that to me. My nose is
I
very...
took these tapes back to the library, and I had to park miles away and walk there because it's so parade.
Okay, honey,
What?
be careful. You're going to take both boys?
Yeah, we're going to have a long walk,
And see if you can get me one of those tapes on Vietnam.
Yeah.
The Tet Offensive, if you can. I have to get the adrenaline going tonight. Tet Offensive will do it. I didn't realize today was St. Patty's. So, right now, I'm removing virtually all the above surface finish. In other words, I'm sanding it right down to the wood. And there's many different names for this. But basically, some people say it's filling the pores. It's not really that. I've done that before on this. So we're taking everything that I put on off, except everything that's in the wood, of course, is going to stay in the wood. And then on top of that, I'm going to build up a hand-rubbed oil finish. Now, years ago, there used to be something, a long time before I was born, something that used to be called a London oil finish. And it's extremely time-consuming, but it left a very, very high luster on the wood without compromising the visuals of the wood or the feel. I mean, I like the way wood looks, I like the way it feels. It's extremely sensuous, friendly wood, leather, ivory. These are royal materials that should be, they should be regarded as royal materials, and it's very important that we have respect for them. After all, this tree was 200 years old about before before we whipped it down. The elephant, for the ivory, the tree, for the ebony, this beautiful wood, even the shell, the mother of pearl, the neck, things like that. It's everything on this guitar was a lot of things were alive, and it's sort of, I think it takes a certain amount of respect. One way or another, all these living things gave their life so we can make these instruments, and I think that, not to get crazy about it, we should have a little bit of respect for that. This is a 200-year-old tree that's a long time. We just whip it down, whip that mother right down. Well, there's less and less of these, by the way. Matter of fact, if you're interested, the situation on real amazing woods like this is very sad. People aren't planting these types. They were basically ornamental. Came from the settlers when they first came to the country. And most of the really nice walnuts come from California, Northern California, Oregon, and the best black walnuts come from Pennsylvania, Iowa. It's a very specialized thing. I can also make a nice guitar that is probably my most traditional instrument. It's called an arch-top F-hole guitar. I only use one F-hole. Do you want to know what I'm trying to do on my instruments in general? Tonally, I'm going after an acoustic sound that is meant to be amplified. Technically speaking, if you're interested in this sort of stuff, it's interesting. I found the guitar not to be a very efficient instrument. And what I mean by that is, it cannot get physical energy. It can't get energy from one's hand, from striking. It can't get that energy and digest it and transfer most of it into sound energy. I don't know the exact number, but I would say it's a very inefficient instrument. So let's say if we give it 100 units of energy of physical energy, maybe out of that 100 units, maybe 30 units of sound energy will be created. Unlike a violin, who has a way more efficient transfer from the physical vibrations into sound energy. Horns, them too, very efficient. And then when you also realize that the instrument itself, the guitar, can't really digest large amounts of energy. The violin is only this big. That digests way larger amounts of energy. You're pulling a bow across it. The energy is not put in one large peak like a plug drum type thing, but it's digesting a huge amount of energy. Pianos, horns, they can all, not only are more efficient, but they can digest more energy. If you put more energy into the string than it can take, the string just goes out of its orbit and it sounds generally bad. Now you can use that expression, that sort of aggressive rat expression, as part of the piece you're playing, but generally speaking, it's not really an option as far as volume goes. It's an option as far as emotion and texture goes. starving artist syndrome is definitely not 80s thinking, you know. You know, it's sort of, you know what, it's great, you know. It is great. Life is so great. You know, from the guys I hung out with, you know, the way we thought about, in the 60s, money had bought more, the American dollar bought more, but we had a disregard for it, maybe because we're at the, you know, material peak, it seems like. We're really cooking. America was really cooking in the 60s. Now it's a lot different. Money's the most important thing. Maybe it was always like that, except in our ignorance we didn't know it. But we made believe that money wasn't as important. And I surely tricked myself quite efficiently. Anyway, as soon as I'm done with this, I'd like to explain what my goals are. Being that you seem to be interested in these guitars, you might as well know how they got like this. You must realize if you look at this and you pick up all the books on guitars, immediately you're going to say, well, Jesselli, you know, this doesn't look like anything else. But if you did some studying, you would then realize that it's not really designed like too many other things, which is not hard to do. I find lots of people design very, very strange things. You know? The point is it at least as good and different or better than the standard in the industry? And the standards change a lot, obviously. They change in very technical things like computers. They also change in art, in music. At one time, a harpsichord was like a very important thing. Now it's not as important. The guitar really is important with rock, and when it first came in, you know, it was open. But back in the late 60s, early 70s, the guitar to have was a Les Paul that had that thick, dark sound. Today's music, you know, with a more biting edge and stuff, and not as much roots in the blues and the syrupy sound, is way, you know, it demands more of a Stratocaster type instrument or a single coil pickup. The texture is different. It's brighter and cleaner and more electronic. You know. Actually, you want to see something weird? In my opinion, I think there's only 3 or 4 guitars in the world. Really. There's a Stratocaster and its types and its copies. There's a Les Paul. There's a 335 and there's a 175 type. Now I'm talking about electric guitars. You know? And that's it. That's it. There's only about 4 guitars in the whole world. And then there are some neat guys that come along and change things and try. You know, and it's and I like that. Like Steinberger, the graphite plastic guitar, if you want to say, with no headpiece. You know, it doesn't matter whether I personally think it's the best guitar alive, but I like what he's doing, what he did, what he said, what he tried. You know, I personally don't like a guitar with no headpiece because I'm into the visuals. No headpiece, not balanced right. There's nothing there, you know. Make a make-believe one, you know. And of course, as you can tell by my instruments, I'm into the royal materials. Plastic is not one of them. But I like that because he didn't just make another Stratocaster, you know. To me, it seems silly to make just another Stratocaster, but I guess we need them. Because if you have a couple of million people wanting Strats, then you have to have somebody to make them. I wanted to explain technically what a Jesselli guitar is. And to do that, you have to know just a little bit about the guitar. Not much, a little bit. It's quite easy, you know. Basically, it goes like this. I told you that I want my guitars so they have the ability to be amplified. because the guitar has to be amplified. If you're playing in a studio, obviously it has to be, the sound has to be converted to an electric impulse, so you can't put it on tape any other way. If you're playing in a small club, you have to, if you're playing with a piano and a horn, you have to have it amplified. If you're playing a big hall, you certainly have to be amplified. So it seems to me that people that want an acoustic or a tonal sound start doing very strange things, put pickups on an acoustic guitar, which is made to project, putting microphones in front. For today's technology and for where the guitar went, I don't think those are the best ways to go about it. So what I did, just my way of doing it, was I designed the guitars, all my guitars, to be very tonal, and a lot of them to be acoustic guitars. Most of them are acoustic, hollow in some fashion, or fully acoustic, made specifically to be amplified. And that's the road I took. And it led to some very interesting discoveries. One of the things I'm looking forward to make is a big window right here. It is death using artificial light. If you're thinking of coloring. Outdoor light is the best. Natural light. Of course, when I'm coloring, I have all those natural lights, mix the spectrum with the reds and the blues. But regular fluorescent lights are worse. They have too much blue and green. They make everything look like monsters. They're very, very harsh, very, And of course, try to correct them with the incandescent types to get a lot of the red and the orange, and the yellow. Gets a little too warm, too hot. It's to improve on Mother Nature. My friend. Now we can leave the rest for 400 grit. And I think we're done. Just with this little bit. Now this is the final sanding, so that means that we don't fool around with this particular one. It goes down to the wood, and it has to be perfect, and that's it. Because if this is not perfect, no matter what we put on top of it, it'll look like junk. Nick, one thing is, before the guy touches the instrument, before he hears the instrument, he sees it. And if it doesn't look nice, that first impression, on the other hand, if it looks great and it doesn't play or sound good, to me, that's even worse, I guess I'd rather have an instrument that looks like a dog and sounds and feels great. But, obviously, what we're going for here. To have an instrument that looks and sounds and feels great. And you can't accomplish that. Not too much more. This is 400 grit, which will be the last grit before I go to a steel wool. And after that, we start the hand rub coats of oil, what we call finger dunks. Finger dunk is dunk your finger in the oil, put a little finger dab on there, and then you rub it for 20 minutes. Not very high tech, but very efficient. Does work. There's really no schools of thought anymore. I mean, there are, but not the way they used to be. They used to have those really great styles, these big sumptuous styles Lewis's, the Deco, the Vogue period, Federal period, the arts and crafts movement. All these type great movements went through the culture on lots of levels. Architecture, clothing, you know, spoons and forks that we ate with, houses, of course, the architecture, and even of course, painting and the written word. Oscar Wilde, he was with the affiliated with the Art Nouveau movement, you know, and to me, I don't know, that's sort of neat, you know. Now you get these little fragmented people doing their own thing. There's no unity. I don't know if that's better or worse. I would have liked to be able to have more people to relate with on a specific style. There seems to be less sharing ideas among artists today. But I really can't say that for a fact because I find it very hard to meet and associate with many people. I'd like to be honest with you. .400 grit, and we're almost done here. You know, something a little strange. All these great things come from the continent, or came from the continent. Art is, just forget it. I'm sure there's lots of nifty American stuff, and there is, even for me, for my small field as far as furniture and architecture. There's lots of nice stuff, you know. But the bulk of the stuff that blows my mind came from France, and, you know, a lot France, most of it, and then, you know, England, Italy, and Spain, Belgium. But the continent, all the stuff came from there, you know, all of it. And I always find it a little strange that there's not too many great guitar makers from the continent. You know, it's sort of like a weird. Obviously, they got the goods, but you know, America in particular seems to have a monopoly on guitars. The only thing that comes from Spain would be the classical guitar, the flamenco guitar. But other than that, virtually all archtop guitars, all Martin-style flat-top guitars, and most of the electric guitars, both in technology and in craftsmanship, they're all from America. You know, it's strange, you know. Maybe I didn't really do any research on that, but that seems to be just an observation from just being in the field for a long time. I always wondered why. I mean, all the guys that I love, all the people that I just have all this admiration for, and their designs and their concepts, they were all from Europe. Well, most of them, you know. And most of them from Paris, as far as a lot of my favorite guys, both in the Nouveau movement and the Deco, they were from Paris, from France in particular. I did like others a lot, a real lot, just as much, but it seems like a way greater number came from France. France, I don't even know if there's a French guitar. There must be, but none comes to the shore on America. American shores are untouched by French guitars, I think, and the Brits have some guitars, but generally they're just not on the level. Yeah, and after all, the Brits had a lot to do with rock, different manifestations of it. You figured they would have gotten a few super electric guitars, and they did have a few tries, but generally speaking, no. And there's certainly no Gibson of England, and there's no Fender of England. And they just never had that. And I'm gonna polish this away. It's sort of a very strange thing I'm doing, you know. It takes hours to put this stuff on, and it takes hours to take it off. And you have to put it on and take it off just right. And then you end up with almost nothing on. You take 95% of the stuff off. And then you start putting the finish on again. I'd like to get this done today because the materials that I ordered will be in tomorrow morning. And as soon as they come in, I'm going to start doing that work. Yes, Ned. Whatever you need will always go up in price the next time you order. It's a strange thing, you know. It's like, I don't know. I was never concerned with prices on anything. But, you know, because I said, who cares if it's $5, $10 more? Who cares? But when something that costs $30 is now $130, well, it's just the idea that, you know, last time you got this a year ago it was $30, now it's $130. It's not that the $130 is that much money that you have to, you know, but it's like, whoa, that's a considerable jump. I'm used to paying $30 for this stuff. So you tend to stock up, but more than the price, something else happens, which is way more important, I think. The availability. It's not there. And at any amount, with any money. I've had this problem with wood often. When it's in, it's in. And if it's not in, it's not in. Now, I'm not saying I can't get wood. I'm talking about specific types of wood I want. Specific figure and sizes. It's very hard. Plus, I like the wood to be in my possession for at least 5 years. At least 5 years before I would think of using it. Especially for certain parts of the guitar. I like having the wood for a while. Like the neck wood. I don't like using any neck wood unless it's been with me for a while. I'm a little bit more forgiving with body wood, but not much. Most of the wood on this level that I use has been in my possession for about 10 years. Believe it or not. About 10 years ago, I started to buy some of this stuff in dribs and drabs. It's very expensive. I don't have that big of a budget, neither then nor now. But I just knew that I was going to use this type of wood for my guitars. It's not available in the sense of the word that you can buy things. Like you can't call a store and order this wood. This is something pretty, I don't really know how to explain it. It's something very un-American. It's not American. You know, you can call up and you go, look, I want a piece 4 inches thick and 8 inches wide and 36 inches long. And let's say it's $300 for a billet of that. And he goes, well, we don't have it. And it's not a matter of, well, I'll offer you $400, I'll offer you $600. It's not there. You know, it's just, you know, they haven't seen that in 2 years. When will you get it in? If we get a tree, you know, with that girth, but all the big trees seem to be gone. Well, you know, it's just like, so it's, you know, then finally if it does come in, you might get a call, hey, we got a tree in that big, blah, blah, blah. And you have to have the money at that time, right on hand. Most of the people that have woods, not most, just about all the people, just about all that have woods like I'm talking about, like this type of specialty stuff, are very, very small businesses. They're certainly not lumber yards. As a matter of fact, I don't get any of my wood from even a very prestigious lumber yard, which there are a few of. It's just the stuff that I'm using is just not on that level anymore. It doesn't get to the yards. It doesn't get there at all. It's sent to the fanatics, you know, and it's very easy. You sell the fanatics the filet mignon of the tree, you quadruple the price, and it works out fine. Basically, when we're talking about wood, like the kind of wood I'm talking about, someone else is paying for it anyway. And what could I say? If you're putting umpteen hundred hours into a product, you're not going to fool around for another $100, $200, $300 for the materials, you know? I mean, it takes the same amount of time if I make this out of the most plain wood that you can find. So that's basically one of the things. Well, really, some woods are a little bit more time consuming to work in than others. Now, as we cut through the shellac, the varnish that we put on here, the wood starts exposing itself in a more friendly way without all the sediment, the dust that was on it, without that glossy, disgustingly glossy Now there's two basic types, configurations of guitars, two basic different types. One's a flat top, and that's the Martin style, and the classical style, flamenco style, you know, cowboy type guitars. And they have a particular sound as far as the steel string ones have. And they're very nice and good sounding. They have a certain characteristic. And then there's the arch top guitar, and that has its own sound, its own strong points, and things that the flat top can't do nearly as well, as the flat top has things that the arch top don't do as well. So those are two different types. But if you look at this, this is neither. This is neither a flat top nor an arch top. I make an arch top. That's one of my standard guitars, my arch top F-hole. But this guitar is sort of a parabolic arch. The arch top is more like a violin thing, where the top curves down and goes below the edge and then back up. And where it goes below the edge, we call that a dish. This is like part of a parabola. And it's almost as if you got a flat top guitar and you crossed it. I'm talking geometrically speaking or mathematically speaking. If you cross those two arches together, you might end up something very much like this. Yeah, it's arched, but the arch is on a smooth curve going that way rather than curving down and up again, making that little dish around the edge like a jazz guitar would, or the normal F-hole guitar would. And with this, I can pull out sounds or what I consider the better attributes of each instrument. Now, you say, well, is it a cross between both? No, it's sort of its own, you know. I guess you can say it's a cross, but I find that it has its own personality. Maybe it's because I'm not used to hearing a guitar like this. Maybe it is a cross. I think it's just getting the term straight really means nothing. It's nice sounding, and it works very nicely. I was very happy with this. It's sort of like a parabolic arch. And it uses the same physical relationships between the bridge and the tailpiece, with the pressure going down on the bridge rather than a flat top having the pressure torquing or twisting or pulling up on the top. As far as I'm concerned, I feel way better with the concept of pushing the vibrations into the top nicely rather than having the vibrations go in by pulling off like on a flat top instrument. So with that, you need a separate bridge and tailpiece, and that's what all my guitars use. They all have that, and that relationship between the bridge and the tailpiece can be manipulated in many different ways, giving me a lot of different things, both tonally and feel-wise. Another tool to get what I want out of an instrument or what a customer really needs. Like on this guitar, I use ivory binding on the neck, but not only is the binding made of ivory, which is fairly unique. I'm sure in the past they must have done that I don't know of guitars right now that have, I mean, I can't even tell you the guitars in the past that have done that. I don't think there are any guitars now that do that. But the reason why I went to ivory wasn't just because I like ivory and stuff, but because the material itself was better suited into what I wanted to do, as far as what I wanted to do, than the bindings that they use now, which are usually some sort of a plastic. I wanted to carve a step in it. I call it stepped binding, and what it does is it reduces the width of the binding, so you have very little part of the neck which is unavailable to the fret. In other words, it's like adding something onto the neck that you can't use. You're adding width on that you can't use. So the ivory can become very thin, and I step it, which is definitely a unique thing, which is one of the things that I do. After you keep doing changing things, after a while you get certain things that you stick with because they work very well for you. And I think when you get a whole bunch of these things that you've been using for a long time, I think all of a sudden you say, hey, I have a style. All these little things that you considered yours or friendly or that work well for you, when you have enough of them and they're all starting to work together and singing the same song, all of a sudden it's like, hey, I have a style. And that is nice. I think a style is something that you can't really set out and say, I want to make my own style of guitars, I want to make my own style of clothes. Or such. I think a style comes, it's in retrospect. When you look back at years of work that you've done in trying to create something in your mind, you're trying to take it out of your mind and put it in the physical world. I think that after years of that, of experimentation, failure, and success, you look at all the things that you've kept, all the things that work, and when they integrate together, you realize it. In retrospect, you look back at it and you go, whoa, I have a style. The first guitar that I whipped out, I remember, that was one of the first ones I was showing you. I knew I'm getting a style, and that is a good feeling. But I don't know if you can really work towards it. More than working for a style, I was working for getting these new ideas that work, a new sound, a new look, a new piece, a new function of a piece. But to get a style is too nebulous. I mean, what do you do to make a style? What do you start making everything look different? Start making everything sound different? It's just, I think it's a bad way, a bad attitude to start with. I don't know if other people start that way to make a new style, but I don't know if it could be done that way very easily. I like using that term. And that's what I was saying. Some of the things on the guitar, like my thumbprints, my fingerprints, it's something that I use that's mine, And that's part of my style, some of the visuals and some of the tonal things. For example, a lot of guitars have heels on them, A heel is this part right here. That's the heel. But I don't think any guitars have a heel that is stepped, that's made out of mother of pearl ivory, that sticks out or goes under like this and has that little point. Now if you look at me and you go, what's with the point, Jesselli? I mean, what's the big thing about the point? Well, there's nothing big about the point, but I've done it. I use it on all my guitars, and it's like one of the many things I use, attention to detail and stuff, that you say, Jesselli uses that. Is it a very important thing as far as function goes? Well, no. Is it important visually? Well, it's a piece, a puzzle, but within itself it's nothing, but it's part of the style. Because that point also goes with these little details on the side of the neck that come up and around, there and there. And that also goes with that. All these little attention to all these little details and stuff connote the style, at least on a physical, visual level. Tonally, it's the same thing. You get a style. You look at the braces, how we put it together, the manipulation of the materials and the respect for them, and that's the way it goes. But this is one of the things. It's little, in this case, not a very functional thing at all. Matter of fact, there's no function to that other than it's pretty. Reverse this around now. far as what I set out to do, I set out to make what I would consider a totally unique guitar as far as what I thought a guitar should be like. And it really grew as my knowledge grew. It really, really grew, yeah? Into something beyond what I could have possibly dreamed back then. But what I set out to do, I think I accomplished now. To be very straightforward with you, I don't know if I set out to really be able to, market these and make money and blah, 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 I mean, I always thought I had to make a living, and do it, but now things are starting to change. I'm starting to realize that the worth of the instruments and how much work goes into it, and as you get older, as one gets older, should I say, we have more of a realization of, how really fragile our lives are and how quickly they can be ended. With that, we don't want to be bogged down forever making guitars with a little return. Money comes into play, money and freedom, they're interchangeable, and blah, blah, blah. And, so now, I'm going to be going on a new little trip here, having nothing to do with what I set out to do. What I set out to do is be able to make something like this. This does not exist. This doesn't exist now, except for in here. And it never existed in any other form. You couldn't say that with a Stratocaster or a Les Paul or anything. This does not exist tonally, structurally, visually, and just emotionally, with the gold. Wait till you see with the gold around it and then a hand rub finish. Almost everything on this instrument is totally new in some sense. Not new that this finish didn't exist, but it existed on, a gun made 100 years ago for the king of Persia, or the gold leafing existed on a Louis XIV armoire, or the Omalu existed on some Riesling's works, or this existed, this in particular, but this emotion, that fluid emotion, existed in works of Hector Guimard, this Art Nouveau guy from Paris. These things are grouped together in my mind from my life experience and stuff into making a different sort of guitar, both technically and visually, It's neat. It's really neat. That's what I set out to do, and I did it. But to be honest with you, I really don't know exactly what the next step is. Not really. I'm sort of procrastinating. The next step is to go to the shows and this and that. I got plenty of very, very good, input. Everybody will, take me to the show, do the article. But, the point I'm getting to, Nick, is that wasn't part of the initial plan, and I don't quite know what I expected out of it. I don't quite know what my goal. Now, what is it? To earn a good living, or to be extremely successful, to be a well-known artist? I mean, I'm not sure what to expect, because it really wasn't part of my initial goal, because I was pretty ignorant. It should have been the economy of guitar making, the money aspect should have always been involved,
I hear you.
I don't know if you do that. I mean,
I don't. I'm learning from you. I mean, there isn't a demand for my paintings, and so So what do? You don't change your style. You were talking about style before, which is very interesting. You hope that maybe
you're part of patron that.
Well, something like that, or either that, or styles will change and sort of swing in, and you'll mesh with what's going on, and you'll be picked up.
Very well put. Nick, that's something that I'm very fortunate that's happening. Guitars are starting to become more and more tonal now, and this is the area where I was living in. Back in the 70s, the guitars weren't on my level as far as tonality goes. I always had people that loved my guitars and stuff, and always did repairs, but now the swing is going towards more tonal instruments. It's sort of going in my direction. So I feel pretty happy about that. I know what you mean. Well, I know what you're saying. I hope you're more successful than I as far as getting the business end of it together, because man, am I bad at that. I put no effort into it because I'm not sure what I want. I don't think I want to have to, whip out 50 of these, or 20 of these a month or 10 a month. I mean, that's out of the question. I don't know if it can be done. I'd have to modify all the nifty things I like and really love about them, It's a strange sort of a thing, Plus, where do you draw the line? Do you draw the line when someone says, someone might tell you, oh, I love this guitar, can you make me one with purple? And you laugh. Yeah, you laugh. You don't think that happens? The thing is, is that the way you should do it? You should choose the customers that you want. I'm undecided. Now I'm doing that again. I decided that now that I have these models, I have 7 different types of guitars I make. Totally different types, and I'm not adding another type to that. So I decided to,
Dad?
Yeah, love?
Your mom's at home.
My mom's home?
Yeah.
Excellent. Is she on the phone now?
She's off now.
Oh, great, hon.
All right.
All right. So I decided to, this guitar, this Soundless guitar, for instance, as soon as I finish the next one that's not for somebody, which in between customers, I want to finish up one, and I'm going to get it, I want to get it to Paul Simon. And the reason is because every once in a while you get a feeling like this guy will love my guitar. It's made for him. This type of guitar is made for this type of guy, both visually, tone-wise, and physically. If the guy's small, you don't want to hand him a giant 18-inch guitar, so we can hardly, so you see a little pair of eyes peering behind this giant body, and so you get a vibe like that. I don't know what proportion of times I'm going to be right to wrong, but I'm going to start like that. Almost all the orders I have now are people that just somehow found me magically. It's just a very strange thing. Just sort of found me. I mean, I don't put any effort into selling my instruments. Very, 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 very little. When the person shows up, I tell him if they're good for him, if they're good what he wants. Often, I tell somebody not to purchase, all too often, because their reasons are so ridiculous on one of my instruments, or what they want me to make, I made one ridiculous instrument, and I swore I would never do it again, and I never will. I made a 12-string bass. 12-string bass. The first and last ridiculous instrument I'm ever going to make. It was a while. It was in the early 70s. I needed the money bad. Oh, I made it so bad. I held this guy up for a year. Finally, one day, he called. He says, "I'm buying a 12-string bass by Hamer. I'm going today and ordering it. If you're not going to accept the order." I said, "Come on over." And that was it. I tried to talk him into a more intelligent, type of a multi-string bass. I said, "How about an 8-string bass?" I mean, an 8-string is more than enough, but no, 12. It sounded like some strange oriental instrument with all these overtones and these chime things going on. It was really something I wasn't very, very happy to make. Sounded neat, looked neat, but it's just strange. So what happens? The 12-string bass goes out of vogue, and maybe the millionaire rock bands that had Hamer make one for free, they just throw it in their pile. But being that I make so few instruments, the ones I make, I want to be really good. I want people to play, You know, sometimes people say, what do you care? You're getting the money for it. What do I care? You know, if I make one instrument a month, if I'm lucky to make one a month, that's 12 a year. You know? Nobody will ever know I exist without a promotion blitz at 12 a year, and I don't make one a month. If I make one every 3 months sometimes, it would be more than amazing. So it's, when you're putting out a couple instruments a year, you got to make sure if they're going to be really good, and if the guys that's getting them, you got to make sure that they're going to stay around the instrument. So I don't like making weird instruments as far as that goes. The back of this is coming up nice. This was Californian grown black walnut, which after being there so long, sort of developed a personality of its own. The California black is not like the North American black in general. You know, if you've got a black walnut from Pennsylvania or Iowa, it isn't the same as this at all. But this is friendly wood to work with a little bit. With the darker woods, the really royal woods, the very fancy woods, I'm very, very, very particular about the kind of finishes I put on. You know, I only have, really, I only use 3 types of materials. I use an oil type finish. It's more the manipulation of the material rather than, there's no magic for, well, I got a magic bottle or something. It's more how you use it. Perfect example is this Man of War gloss marine varnish. You can go down to any good paint store and purchase a can of it. That using other oils with it and other waxes after that into oils and burnishing, or should I say rubbing out in certain ways, it's going to give this guitar an amazing finish. If you just slap that stuff on, sanded it down, and buffed it out, it would give you nothing at all like what I'm going to be getting on this instrument. I'm using that as sort of an undercoat, you know. But basically I use 3 different types. The traditional for the guitar is the nitrocellulose lacquer, and I use that on a lot of my instruments. I always use it on my F-hole guitar, always. And I use it on a lot of other guitars. And the characteristic of that finish is high gloss. You know, it's very uniform high gloss, and it's a definite above the surface finish. In other words, you know something's on top of the wood. Now, that's good. It's, you know, for certain things it's great, and it's for certain things it's expected. As I keep saying, for like an arch top F-hole guitar, or even a flat type Martin type guitar, I couldn't imagine going with anything else. But then, when you really start breaking with guitar tradition, like this sort of instrument, I broke with the lacquer finish. Initially, I used to use the nitrocellulose lacquer because it's an extremely nice finish. It's beautiful, you know. However, when you start to work with very, very nifty woods, it has a few things about it that aren't quite up to snuff. Now, I'm really starting to split hairs, but it's very real. One of the things is the lacquer is a little too harsh. It's a little too shiny, and it gets a high gloss. It doesn't really, unless you use an eggshell type and all this other junk, it doesn't really get a really high sheen, and it doesn't have a really beautiful warmth to it. Plus, it hides the wood totally as far as touching wise. The finish is thicker than, like, let's say an oil finish, and you really can't get any finish but an above the surface finish with it. So that right away dictates what kind of finish and what kind of mood the finish is going to set. where on this particular guitar, when the guy, after I'm done, when he opens the case and takes a look at this, it's going to be way more of an old world finish, you know? Beauty from human hands from rubbing a long time, not necessarily from being shot out of a gun and buffed on a buffing wheel at 500 RPMs. You know, some things happen sometimes with the instruments that aren't related. I'll give you an example. With the wood, you know, I finally find the kind of wood I really love, one of the kinds of woods that I want to use. And then you start finding out that, well, you know, those trees aren't planted anymore, Joseph. You know, what do you mean they're not planted? Well, you know, they use dwarf trees, thanks to genetic engineering, that you can get a tree that bears this fruit, and instead of waiting 20 years, you get, it starts bearing in 5. And in proportion to the tree, it bears way, way more. And it's a dwarf tree. Instead of it being like, you know, 100 feet tall, some giant thing, it's really short. It's easier to pick the nuts, and it bears more fruit than its natural, the natural predecessor that it had. The only thing is, they don't look pretty. They're these little scrawny things, you know. And at the end, there's no wood to speak of. It's just like this. It's like a twig. And I found that, well, we're eating better, but the wood, the supply of wood, the quality supply of wood is diminishing quickly. And then, of course, being that your mind's in tune with this wood stuff, inevitably you hear the bad news about the Brazilian rainforest. Inevitably, everybody knows about that. All the rainforests, and I can't bear to watch it. Basically because I like wood, I like trees. One might say, well, if it wasn't for guys like you, they wouldn't cut down the trees, but that's not true. The main point of a finish is to protect the wood, and then it's for tone somewhat, and for the visual a lot. So that, you know, but basically it's for protection, to stop absorption and loss of water, which would make your wood go and do very bad things. Plus, there's other reasons why. You know, if you keep putting your hand on the neck and there was no finish on it, all your skin and perspiration would get in there, and the neck would become pretty gringy after a very short period of time. So, a finish is absolutely mandatory. But there are finishes, and I use them a lot. That's what I'm trying to tell you. These subsurface finishes that aren't very, very obvious. They're, you know, you can see they're finished, but they're not out there like a shellac or a lacquer on top of the wood. You know. Why I started those type finishes on these, because if you're working with such gorgeous wood, you don't want to mask it, you know? You don't have to mask it in between something. You don't really have to improve it either. All you have to do is as little as possible. I don't know if it was me or what, but it seems like a longer time ago, and I can only say from what I read and hear, that the artists were sort of treated a little differently, because artists generally didn't have money, but their art made them noble in their cause. Their art made them worth something as a person. If they were good, they were good. And it didn't matter if their bank book didn't match their art or their works.
I work for an artist in the city. I think I told you that.
You work for an artist?
A guy named Alex Katz, and he's doing very well. He's one of the best painters living, you know. And I've been his assistant for 10 years, 9.5 years.
That's like an apprenticeship.
Well, it's the same thing, right? It's as much as being an apprentice as you could be, I think, in 1980, whenever we're in. You know, I I do everything I can for
He
him.
mixes colors?
Yeah.
That's amazing, all right? I'm pretty impressed, okay?
So I know what you're saying when you talk about apprenticeship and how it's not it's kind of a lost field, because first of all, his technique is, although his images look modern, his approach and his technique are old world, very traditional. I mean, he makes cartoons. I mean, you know what a cartoon is?
Sure.
Right.
Stained glass makes cartoons a lot good.
Right. You know, he makes cartoons like Da Vinci. You know, and the paper sketches that the way he transfers them to the canvas is the same thing the way Da Vinci would do, and it's the best possible way to do it. I mean, you couldn't think of a better way to do it. Mixing his colors is very interesting, you know, because he'll give me he works very large. His paintings could be 20, 30 feet long or high.
Oh, God, the giant mural type things. I love that.
Not every painting is that big, but there have been. You know, that's sort of his style in a sense, to make bigger than life images of people or landscape.
That's harder. I think it's harder. I don't know. To me, it seems like it would be. And what does he, not on canvas, on walls? What does he work on?
Canvas.
Canvases? Canvases that big? Oh my goodness.
He'll give me a small painting to work from, maybe the size of this paper here, and I mix up the colors so he can do the large one. You know, and of course they have to be right on the nose. And I have to know how he mixes colors, what he'll add to what to get that particular shade, you know, because there are different ways you can approach to approximate it, but to get it right on the nose, you got to sort of match his formula.
Oh, I got you. I'm reading you. How did you get chosen for that, though? You had a symbiotic relation as far as the way you mix the paint. You had a similar eye, similar vision.
Well, before I even knew he existed, I was painting in a certain way that was similar to his, or similar sensibility, you know. And then when I saw one of his works in a museum, I thought, I was stunned, you know. And I wanted to know everything I could about him. And
interesting. That's really neat.
when he was giving a lecture at the School of Visual Art, when it was over, you know, I approached him thinking I might I asked him for a job as an assistant. And he said, well, give me your name and number and maybe I'll call you. And I left thinking, well, I tried, you know, and that's as best I can do. And 2 days later he called. And like I said, it was like 9.5 years ago. I learned more from him in 2 months than all the art school I went to, you know.
I'm going to be showing in a couple of galleries, galleries of functional art, you know, statues, chairs, you know, there's craft galleries they call them. These guitars cannot keep going on as a guitar. They're not just a guitar. This is more than a guitar. So I have to find out. I have to make a decision. Which way I'm going to handle this? What am I going to do? You know, how am I going to expose this work to the public? You know, should I just go about it through stars? I mean, that's one way. Utilizing just the stars, the jazz stars, the rock stars. That's one way. But I'm unsure. Perhaps galleries are a better way. I'm not really sure about it. You know? Do you have any idea? You seem to have a good understanding of the art world. It's better than mine, definitely. I think that's a good way to do it.
Well, I think you should do both. You know, it's like to keep on. It's your work should be appreciated by a greater number of people than, you know. It seems like if somebody owns a guitar, it's almost out of view.
The circulation,
right?
It's gone.
And if you can have a show, if you can.
How long do you leave it at display? How long?
A month.
A month. That's what you do. Usually you leave it on display for a month.
Just about, yeah. And I'm trying to get into a gallery in the city, and I've got 2 people. And so I'm not good at promoting my work at all, but there used to be a woman in Northport who sold a lot of my work, which was, I mean, the first time you start selling a lot of work, you just can't believe it. Because before that, the stuff is just laying in a corner, and
Isn't it great? I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's a feeling that I know what you mean. That's all I can say.
well, she did pretty well, and she retired, and she was older, and you know, great for her. And it hasn't been until like the last 6 weeks ago that someone, you know, came up to me and wanted to try and sell some work again, and nothing has happened yet, but it's maybe too early. Before that, I tried taking slides of every painting and sending them out to galleries, and to galleries, which is kind of nowhere. It doesn't happen with paintings. I could see you'd have more luck with guitars because this is just such a unique, you know, who else is doing this?
I know. I have no competition on this level. I know what you mean. But you think going to a gallery would be better, a better way of doing it, huh?
Well, I don't.
As far as exposure goes.
I think if you were discovered, I mean, or recognized by the art community as for your sculpture, your functional art, I mean, I think it makes sense. You know, I mean, you can do both though. You can
Exactly. Yeah.
because the drawback to having it, just looking at your work is that you can't really
Play it, you can't hear it, right?
hear it. It can't be used, and it becomes a museum piece.
That's my critics say. Not that I have many, like, friend critics. They go, you know, a lot of guys buy a guitar and they order another one because they'll order one that's not, you know, not as nice. And, you know, and then the reason is because the first one they don't want to take out anywhere. And I see that a lot. A lot of my guitars aren't used because no one wants to take them to the clubs, you know. Don't forget, everybody's not a rock star that gets these things. And, you know, they save up their bucks for it. They don't want to bring it to a club. They don't want to bring it to a bar. It's, you know, I understand it. You know, I really do. But so that's been a friend and a foe of mine. Even Keith, same thing. He said once when I left, last time I saw him, I was supposed to make him another one, a solid body type that. He doesn't have to worry about, he said. He said, make it ugly. Make it ugly. Movie concept. This is getting very close to being ready for the oil. Can't be any more than another 3 hours worth of work on this at the most, 3-4 hours. And then the oil goes on. Pretty boring, tedious work. That's with the this helper that I have. He'll be doing a lot of this, except, you know, to do this, it's sort of like mixing paints. It's not schlock work. It may be tedious, and it may not be something that you want to spend all your time doing. However, if it's not done perfectly, it's not done really good. No matter what you do, the finish will look like garbage. Finish is 90% surface, you know, preparation. 90%, no matter what you do afterwards. If you don't do the surface prepping right, it's irrelevant. It really is. It just does not matter. So it makes what I'm doing now extremely important. Sanding in the right direction, with the right amount of pressure. You sand too hard, you cut through the finish. You don't sand light enough, you don't get a uniform thing. It's just something that's, I don't know, it doesn't take any talent. It takes technique.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think anybody can probably do this after you practice a lot and you get this technique down. When someone sees one of my guitars, I want the feel and the tone. I want that to be a bonus. I want them to, for a split second before they actually play it, to say something that looks this good can't work. I don't want it to be another tool. That's one of the things. I just don't want it to be a tool. It's more than a tool. I want it to be more than a guitar, and which is a very down-to-earth thought. A Rolls Royce is more than a car, you know. However, it won't get you from here to Huntington or here to the city any better. being called. Feel it. Excuse me. My main concern was designing this stuff and making sure it worked, and getting it so it looked like it grew, you know, like nature. Nature never puts something on an animal or a person or a tree that doesn't belong there, you know? It always looks like, yes, this all belongs, right? But there's certain business aspects that really I never really thought of, and they're starting to come up against me they're quite intense, like hitting a wall. Pricing one's work sounds like something very tacky, doesn't it, Nick? But the thing is that, you know, it's like, it seems to be one of the more ridiculous things to ask an artist to do, or a craftsman even. I mean, if it was just a matter of, well, I should get paid this much an hour, and I work this many hours, fine. But for some reason, on a subliminal, on an emotional level, or subconscious level, that's not the way I'm working on this. And I don't think I want to. I'd rather work on the piece. How do you figure out what something's worth? Do you look at other things around that are similar and decide whether yours is on that level, better or below? And do you price it according to those other established prices? Or do you do something totally different? Or does the market tend to set the price on your pieces? From your experience working with other artists, being that you have a lot more input, and I know it's sort of a tacky thing to discuss, it's sort of like magic, you know, artists work and the money just shows up, you know, but in reality it's not like that. With me, it's magic. With me, it truly is magic, the money just shows up. What I want to know is, you know, how does one go about deciding the value of a piece? I mean, other than, you know, the materials that it costs and stuff. I mean, what do they do? Please don't tell me some formula like where you get the time that you worked on it, and then you get the overhead. And you get that. I mean, if that's it, I know about that. And for some reason, I don't feel very comfortable with that, but I will use it if that's what everybody says they do it. It seems like such a hollow way to do it. However, I'm open for some suggestions, you know. You know, I think we should understand who we are. You know, what level our work is on, what influence it's going to have. You know, what its average value is. Obviously, this is not on the level of the old masters. Never will be. It's not intended to be. I'm not an old master. You know, I'd be just as happy reaching my goal, which is undefined right now. I think it has something to do with happiness and enough money not to worry about the immediate future. But these things are very iffy. And when it comes to art, and I really hate some statements. I don't know if you've gotten these yet, or if you. I hope you don't get these, but a union plumber makes $36 an hour. You know, it's just like, I don't want to know what the union. What are you saying? I should stop doing this, and we should all be union plumbers? I mean, what, the dollar per hour wage? It should be the sole guiding light of everything that we do. I don't know. You know, I don't know if that's a healthy thing to tell somebody when they're trying to, trying to finalize the last 15 years of their life's work. I don't think you should start discussing that perhaps they should have been a union plumber. The guy that told me that also whipped out a few others. Carpenters make $26 an hour. Blah, 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 blah. You know, it's everybody, including garbage men, seem to have made more money per hour than I have. But it's a good thing that everybody doesn't think like that, or else I don't know. I think the world would be a pretty weird place. Pretty weird already, but it'd be really strange. If monetary was our only guiding light, the monetary gain.
You know, when I was, even before I was born, my father started making a violin and a guitar. And that's why I told my father I was coming over to film you, and he asked what you did, and I said guitar, and he was very interested in this. He made a violin with like a pocket knife. Sounded okay, you know, but he was really...
With a pocket knife?
Just about, yeah, in an apartment in the city.
Great. I love that sort of stuff.
He made the scroll and the neck out of a 2x4.
That's great. To me, that's great. I gotta tell you, I love hearing that. You still have it?
Oh.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
Sure.
I'd love to see that. What made him make a violin? Does he play? Does he?
Yeah, he's a musician. He's a singer, and he can play some instrument. But,
Oh, wait a minute. He plays with June DeQuisto?
No. No, he's not a violinist.
Is he a jazz player, guitar player,
No,
bass
he's a
player?
singer.
Singer?
But he always made things out of wood. Always. Where is this one going? Is that a secret?
No. Australia. You know, I sell guitars out of the country sometimes. Don't meet the people. Sort of a strange thing because I'm not really. At this point, I'm really relatively unknown. For people to fork out all this money, I mean, that's a lot of money. You know, and by the way, just to get it into the country is a 42% tariff. 42%. That's almost half as much again. So if something is $3,000, automatically it's $45,000. 4,500. You know. I don't know what you think of that. I consider that to be, just like somebody just says everything's 50% more, and not to mention the shipping. You know what it costs to ship something to Australia? Australia is, I think, 16 hours away non-stop by plane or jet. 16 hours non-stop. That's what I think it is. 16. I'm almost positive. 16. Can that even be? It's far away. Far, far away. And so that's where this one's going. And I want to make the Aussies really happy with this particular one. We'll have a couple of my instruments there, and I like sending my instruments out of the country. I like it because it's like a good feeling to know that people think that much of them, that they order. I mean, to order something of this level without knowing the person is it's an interesting concept, isn't it? My name is right up on the headpiece, and it's always my guitar no matter what. So I feel there's only certain things I'll do because I've made plenty of guitars that I thought were dogs that I hope I could burn, just burn. But the funniest thing about it, make one of these guitars and go, this time we know this was great because I know I'll never do that again. You know, I'll never put the bridge on that angle ever, you know? Something that doesn't work, in my opinion. The guy gets it. 2-3 months later goes up. It's the best guitar. Everybody, we're raving about it. So when this happens a few times, you start realizing that it's a bad thing to happen. It's a bad thing to do something that you know is not good and have people saying it's great. You do it once, perhaps twice. If it starts happening with any regularity, what I think could happen is that your work will start, they don't know that you have this attitude, they're all jerks, they don't, and all of a sudden you're not making the instruments for yourself, you're not painting for yourself on your own level, you're not competing with yourself. Give them what they deserve. They won't know the difference beyond that. You automatically level yourself off. You'll never go beyond that level. Never. It'll just be luck if you get a good one in, you know? And so I'm scared of that. I don't like doing that. But every time I thought a dog went out, I'd get a phone call and it would be, you know, it's got to be a joke here. You know, my wife said, it's got to be funny. You know, who knows? Who knows what's going on, you know? It's, I imagine in pure art or in high art, which is painting, I think it's so subjective that, well, who knows? I mean, I still, that's one of the things I still can't figure out. What makes it great? I mean, is it technique? Well, no, it's not totally technique. Look at Miro's, right? That'd be, I mean, you see how great technique, you can say that great technique? I mean, the work he's known for is, you know, the school children work, school children work, you know, those little, you know, with the primary colors.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
is that, would you consider that great technique?
Well, I think each artist develops their own
Style?
And then they develop their technique, you know, they're great ones. And I just, you mean, is there one technique, is there something wrong with this technique that you couldn't call it great or something? But
no, I think he's great, but now, of course I haven't seen all of his work stuff, but generally when you think of his works, generally you see that with the primary colors and the black outlines, childlike, and there's some nice, it's always mixed in with some nifty things and the colors and stuff, really nice. However, technique, it seems like something that can be easily copied in opposition to the technique of Salvador Dali, who gets a person's skin, and, well, maybe that's even easier, but that's more technique, but perhaps even easier to copy.
Yes.
Perhaps,
yeah.
You know, but it's more technique. I mean, there's more technique in getting skin tone and expression, perhaps, than the bold lines, you know, with the black outlines. What do you think? You're painting. Is that true? It seems like that to me because I'm not a painter.
Well, I don't know. I think they're both equally as hard, believe it or not.
Great, great. I sort of knew you were going to say something. That's good, though. I understand. I understand what you mean. And you have Gustav, what, I don't know, Klimt, his works. And then before that you have the Prince of Beardsley.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about darker emotions. But I really liked Boldini's work. Is that the way you pronounce it, Boldini?
Yeah.
I really, really thought that was, you know, I really liked it a lot. Is he considered a master, or is he just like a low level guy?
Well, I mean, medium, you know, like.
Well, you know, I don't. That's the whole thing. It's just, I mean, I guess the whole thing is money, isn't it? No matter, we can't get away from it. How much does his painting sell for?
No.
Hundreds of thousands, or
No. I think it's, at this point, it's like, I don't know. I mean, his work is great and equal to any other artist, but some artists are maybe more equal than others, in the sense that when you start thinking about Matisse and Picasso and Cézanne, I mean, those are the great ones from the last 100 years or so. And other people may do paintings that are just as good, but historically those three were the real movers in terms of the direction of art is going to was and is going to be. You know, we're still responding to
Good
that.
point. We're responding to them, but Baldini is just as good as an artist. However, history wasn't as kind to him, and art didn't go in the flow that he didn't march to his tune. Is that what you're saying? That's a really beautiful way of putting it. Is that what you said or no? I
It
like
is.
that. It makes me feel comfortable.
It is,
Because that's the point I was saying. I'm sorry for interrupting you. I can't find the freaking difference. I look at that. I say, what makes his work not as good as, you know, any of these other guys that you're talking about? And, you know, I figured, well, it's because I don't know enough about art.
No,
Perhaps
no,
it's
no.
the technique. Perhaps they were the first ones that did this. You know, perhaps. But I never really understood. But what you're saying makes it all so, yes. Most of the things I read on art are only for me. They're, generally speaking, the information I get is mine, and it has to do with two periods of art, Deco, Nouveau, art periods, styles, and generally speaking, I don't read art appreciation too much. I'll get like the American artist, American craftsman, but generally speaking, the work I'm involved with, they don't call it fine arts. That's why I like the Deco period and the Nouveau period, because they try to dismiss the distinction, break down those walls between fine art and, you know,
Right.
jewelry or shoes or clothes or architecture. You know, architecture's not a fine art, you know, or at least,
Yeah, I know.
you know,
it's like
I think it is, you know.
yeah,
I
I
mean,
know. I wouldn't want to agree to that, but I mean, it's you know, Frank Lloyd Wright, or something.
yeah,
like
I mean, agree.
But listen.
You know,
All right. I've got to go. Because I'm meeting someone. But I really appreciate coming over.
appreciate nothing. I wish I didn't have to work so we can
No,
get some
you kidding?
conversation. But I got this is boring work. But I told you, I tried to warn you. You know, I have to do this boring work on Sunday or something else. Just I have to do it. If I don't do this, obviously, it doesn't get done.
I'm glad I hope I didn't get in the way.
No, you didn't. But I would like, so you will come over. I'll give you a call, and you will come over to. Do you have a card with you?
Yep.
Good. I want the card. I'll give you a hand out. I'll clean up my hands and give you
Oh,
one.
no, don't worry about that. You just keep going.
Yeah, it's no big deal. But yeah, we'll do that, and we can see perhaps how it looks on. Are you thinking of using your work for other things like
This work?
perhaps? Well, your knowledge of the camera for other things like oh, I don't know,
I use it.
rock video.
I did
something
one
like
with I did a real primitive kind of video with and it came out alright. I'll have to show it to you sometime. You know, I don't have a time-based control or anything like that, and the syncs are a little off because I'm doing it by eye. But there's a nice spirit to it.
So you're thinking you will do things like that if the opportunity, you know, presents itself. Then.
Well enough, on the level that I can. I mean, you know, it's like I don't have the great professional equipment that you need. It's just I don't know where the direction of this video stuff's going, to tell you the truth. I've only been doing it for about a year and a half, and only been editing since this summer. But in this time, I've been, you know, using it practically every single day.
I like your attitude. You don't know where it's going, but you're doing it.
Oh yeah, it's great when a scene works out, or a cut works, or whatever. You know, all these pieces coming together.
You know, I love hardware. I mean, I love the way that looks. I love hardware. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of the things I try. You know, my shop is hardware intensive. You know, I have
I'm
a
gonna
lot
come
of
over and just film, you know, the.
that machine's custom made. Totally. That's totally custom. How much that cost?
I
It
don't
cost
know.
almost $10,000.
Show.
I swear to God, that thing. And I had to make the erector set thing. Just those
Oh yeah.
the two I-beams and stuff. That's 10 grand. Just about 10 grand. 10,000 real dollars, not the centavos or something. Even little machines that I modified so they can't be used for their original thing. Like you take that little thing right there.
Yeah.
That does one job. I modified so it slices the things for the frets. The raw machine alone is $700. The accessories, another $400 or $500 to get it to do what I want. And now it can't even do the original job because I have modified it. So you figure that's like $1,200, and all it does is make the slot so I can bang the thread in. Period. That's it.
That's insane.
This machine
Right.
here is $1,000 right here. This thing here is $1,000 with the motor, maybe $1,200. All it does is it makes the fingerboard. That's all it does. I put the fingerboard and it gives me any arch I want on the fingerboard. That's it. Period. Done. You know, all these things are specialized, remodified, custom designed. All these things. You know, and then of course there's regular machines too. But
I'd like to come
It's,
over and sort of set the camera up in front of each one of them and you tell me what it does.
a lot of them are modified. Most of the guitar tools are modified. There are no Luthier's tools, and the ones that are available
Yeah.
offer modern guitar guys that just don't really know what's supposed to go on. You know, it's a big rip of these schools. Oh, I feel so bad. I have so many nifty stories to tell it. You know, there's this, about schools. I knew guys who went to luthier schools, you know, guitar making schools.
Right.
And they were the top in their class. They stayed on for the next 2 semesters. That's another whole year. Living there for free room and board, and all the bench space they want and stuff, as long as they helped teach, right?
Right.
You know, the guys didn't even know how to make guitars. He came here. I'll tell you it's a story. It's a long story. This is my first interaction with the thought of that's it, because I never thought it was good enough of finally getting one of my guitars to Keith Richards. You know, when I saw what went down, and I'll tell you that. Remind me to tell you the first Keith Richards story because it's truly amazing. Yeah, hold on. I'll give you a hand up with this stuff. It's truly amazing on a very strange level. Very strange.
No, I'd really like to hear it. I apologize for having to run out.
No, this is still on.
I know.
Are you going to go up and come down again?
Yeah.
Fine.
Couple of trips. What an incredible day out there.
Yeah, I didn't really get a chance to see it, but I'll take your word. It's one thing I'm looking forward to changing.